Welcome to the Bigfoot Society. In this episode, I talked to Roman about his multiple encounters with Bigfoot over the years in the Stevens Creek area of Edgefield County, South Carolina. If you've experienced something similar to what Roman did or have more information regarding Bigfoot or other cryptids in the same area, please reach out to me immediately after this episode. Remember, your encounter could be the key to unlocking this mystery once and for all. Please reach out to me today using the email bigfootsociety@gmail.com. All right, Bigfoot Society, got the privilege of talking to Roman tonight. Roman reached out to me and wanted to share some interesting things that he's encountered over the years. How's it going tonight, Roman?
Going pretty good. Jeremiah, how you doing?
Oh man, it's been a wild and cold time in Iowa, but I get through every day so I can talk to someone about Bigfoot. It's been 20
it's
below.
pretty cold down here too. Yeah, we're at like 20 degrees and that's bad enough for me.
Oh man. Hey, I say we get right on into it and we'll see where the conversation leads, but I'm just going to let you go ahead and take the floor, Roman, and share what you've experienced over the years.
Okay. I grew up in Edgefield County, South Carolina, and I lived there my whole life. From the day I was born, I'm 51 years old now. I was born, I got two sisters. I was the youngest, two older sisters, and we was raised. Yeah, we sat down at the dinner table and ate dinner every night as a family, went to church every Sunday. My dad he was a hard worker. He taught me growing up to do right and work hard, and that's just the way it was. I had the best mom and dad a man ever wish for. But I grew up right there on Stevens Creek. Stevens Creek, when you think of a creek, you think of something small, but Stevens Creek's more of a reservoir. It backs in. It's a reservoir off the Savannah River. When I say creek, people run bass boats, pontoon boats in it. We got boat houses. Our place, my dad's place, is right there on Martintown Road, and it goes all the way back to Stevens Creek. And we got a road that goes down a big hill, and when you get down the bottom of the hill, we got like a big covered dock that's got a roof on it, and take a left and go up the creek. And we got a couple other docks right there on the water. We keep it pretty nice down there, and a lot of people come there fishing and stuff. After my actual encounter, my sighting, I started doing some research, listening to other people's stories, started listening to your show and listening to other people tell how their encounters went down. And after that, I started thinking back all these things that had happened to me when I was younger. And that's where I like to start out at. Let's go back to when I was 18 years old. Everything out here was pretty, there's houses in between. Across the street, maybe a couple like smaller subdivisions where every house had acreage. But on our side of the road, it's mainly bigger acreage. And so you have one person lives here, it'd be 20, 30 acres. This person lives here, 20, 30 acres. So it's pretty spread out. And when you get down to the creek, across the creek was mostly farmland and stuff like that. It still is that way on our side. You got across the street, it's got a couple subdivisions and stuff like that. But anyway, I'd met a girl over there and we started dating. And by the time, for about a couple of years, and she ended up getting pregnant. I was 17 when she got pregnant. And we had the baby. And it was tough being that young of a dad. And I turned 18. My son, I guess he was about 6, 7 months old. I had been over there at night. Then he was, I think, having a little trouble sleeping. So I ended up falling asleep in her bed while we were putting him to sleep. I ended up waking up like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, Darren, I got to go home. And I had walked over there that night. So when I left her house, you walk down this like long, big hill. And you got a couple of houses on the right, left. And there's a shorter cut that you can take. And you take a right and it goes down this big hill. And it's got real dark. And it's got a couple of graves in the woods like from the 1800s. So I'm thinking, man, I ain't walking down that way. I said, I'd rather walk all the way to the Martintown Road and go the long way than walk down that spooky way. So anyway, I get down to Martintown Road and I take a right and I'm walking up toward my parents' house and I hear something off in the woods. And back then I was like an avid deer hunter. I lived for it. I love the deer hunt. And I'm thinking, man, I bet that's a deer coming this way. So I squat down in the road, just trying to lay low, thinking the deer might come up to the road and then walk on out. As I'm sitting there, all of a sudden, I just heard this thing started coming at me, hear limbs ripping off trees, limbs snapping and breaking. And I stood up and I'm like, oh my God, that's a bear. So I just took off running as fast as I could run. And this thing came up, and instead of coming up to the road, there's a ditch line, like the power line that runs down the side of the road. And you know how them things are. This thing was just nothing but like blackberry vines and briar bushes, and this thing's just plowing through it. I'm running on the highway up on the hill, and it's down in that ditch, just running just through the briars. And I get all to my parents' driveway, which is as fast as I've ever run in my life. And I stop just for a second. I hear it just feel this real deep hush. It's breathing. So I take back off, run up about 100. After my parents got like some real big brick entrance gates as soon as you get to the driveway. There's about 100 or more yards up to the house from there. So I took back off again and opened the screen door. I was about trying to shut myself in between the screen door and the regular door, and beating on the door. And they finally came and let me in. And I'm like, oh, but bear chasing me down the road, you know. And anyway, so now after knowing what I know now, I don't think that was a bear, because I'm listening to the stories. And bear don't normally just go and just start, snatching limbs down off trees, and I don't think they do anyway. But as much ruckus as that thing was making, I could have turned back and looked when I was running, but I figured if I turned my head while I was trying to run, it would slow me down. I was trying to just make sure I had the only thing I wanted to do is make sure I was running as fast as I could run. But anyway, we'll forward on up to the actual sighting. Anyway, like I said, each property is divided 20, 30 acres. And then the next property over 20, 30 acres. And then you had my neighbor to our right-hand side. That he lived about halfway up on the right. And then his sister lived all the way at the back. She had a trailer back there at the top of the hill, right? But the way it is, it's pretty flat, and, till you get back to where the creek is. And once you get toward the creek, about 100 yards before you get to the creek, it's a big hill that goes downhill. And she lived right there at the top of the hill on the right-hand side, on their property. And her name was Betsy. She was a good lady, but a tough old lady too, man. And anyway, she done come up to me. She's come up to me a couple times, and she said, "Roman, there's a Bigfoot down there." And I just blew it off. I thought she was a little crazy on that one. And then a few months later, she came back to me. She said, "Roman," she had a 357 Magnum in her hand. She said, "Roman, there's a Bigfoot down there." She said, "I was sleeping last night, and I woke up." She said, and something walked by my window, and she said, "My window is 8 feet off the ground." She said, "I'm going to go down there." And she said, "This thing's living in some cave down there somewhere." And she said, I'm going to go there and I'm going to shoot that thing. I said, "Basically," there ain't no Bigfoot down there, And I've never, ever, not one single time, this whole time with everything going on, never thought Bigfoot. Never. I've always believed in Bigfoot, but I didn't think there were any Bigfoot around here. I thought they were all way off somewhere in California or somewhere like that, in like the national forest and the big national forest and stuff like that. But anyway, so let's go on to the day I had my sighting. Then on the creek, I spent a lot of time down there. It's like my salvation there. It's so beautiful and quiet. And that's where I go to think, and when I got things in my mind. And also I have a little outcrop down there. It's got a lot of minerals and a little bit of copper and a little bit of gold in it. So I get in there and I like to get in there and dig and get my rocks. And there's gemstones. It's volcanic, so I find all kind of crystals and stuff in the rocks. So that's just fun for me. Get in there and just be in the woods. And there's times I've gone in there at 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm talking about, and this is like deep woods. I'm talking about like it's swampy down there. So even at 1 o'clock in the morning, I get in there by myself and no problem. I wasn't scared. I'd always hear things walking in and making these weird noises, but never thought one single time it was a Bigfoot or anything like that. One afternoon, I'm coming up. I've been in there my hole digging and starting to get. It's not dark yet. It's starting to get dark. So I have my buckets and I come on up the hill. And when I get about 3/4 of the way up the hill, I stop and I'm taking like a little rest because the bucket of rocks are heavy, so I can only go so many yards, and then I have to set it down and take a break and get so many yards. But the last time I sat it down, I'm sitting there for a second, and I started smelling. It smelled like a skunk. I'm sitting there looking around. I said, "Man, there's a skunk right here." I said, "Man, it's got to be like right here." It felt like it was like under my feet. That's how strong it was. And I'm looking around, and about this time, I heard, "Wow!" Just damn loud holler. I didn't even have to look yet. And the first thing that popped in my head was the skunk smell. Betsy saying there was Bigfoot down there. And I don't know, somewhere during my lifetime, I lost fear. I just don't have it. But I think when I heard that things holler for the first time, I actually just had almost like a smiling smirk on my face, meaning thinking, you got to be kidding me. Don't get me wrong, it was, I had the initial the shock of it, because I got something right here hollering at you. It ain't supposed to, it's not just, don't think you'd ever run into anything like that in your life. And it's sitting over there, it's behind this holly tree, real thick holly tree. And it's just, I mean, you can see it's just waving its arms, and it's just sitting there just steady, just screaming at me. And I'm thinking somebody is messing with me, you know. But the only thing with that, I don't really hang out with anybody. I'm real, you know, I have a few friends, you know, I don't really hang out with that many people. And most people that I hang out with and know me, you know, wouldn't do anything like that. Unless everybody knows normally I always got like a pistol on me, you know. So, I mean, that'd be dangerous to play a prank like that. But I'm still thinking possibility. It's sitting there yelling, and so I figured I'm going to say something funny or stupid to do. If there's somebody messing with me, they're going to laugh. So I said, Bigfoot, I said, I ain't got no problem with you. I said, I know this 22 Magnum I got right here in my waist probably wouldn't even phase you. I said, just to let you know. I said, if you come running at me, I said, I'm going to shoot you right in your nuts. And they didn't laugh. Ain't nobody laughed. Matter of fact, it dropped down on all fours, and it took off about 40 more yards up behind this cedar tree. And that thing, I'm talking about, when it dropped down and took off, I've never seen anything in my life as fast as that thing was. I said, no. And right then, I knew it was definitely not nobody playing with me. So it got over there behind the cedar tree, and it's sitting there. And I could never really get a good look at its face or anything, because it was always behind a bush. But I could see it, but just never in detail at one time because of the bushes that it was staying behind. But it was sitting there, and it started screaming and yelling and just like that. And I look over at it, and I point toward my truck. I said, I'm going to my truck. My truck was at the top of the hill, and there's like a little circle that when you come in, it goes up and kind of circle, and I had it pointing facing out. It's sitting there, and it's steady yelling and raising hell and waving and just throwing his arms and all over the darn place and shaking the tree that it's standing behind. So I go open my truck door, and I shut my door, and I don't crank it up and go to leave or anything. I'm like I said, I wasn't scared. I was just in shock. And so I'm just sitting there, just looking out the window, just facing the hand on the stairwell, just trying to take in what was going on. After I got in my truck, it shut up. I didn't hear nothing else. So I'm sitting there. I sat there about 10 minutes, and I'm just thinking about it. And all of a sudden, the whole ass end of my truck just it felt like it dropped down about 8-10 inches and just bounced back up. And I looked in my rearview mirror, and I didn't see anything. And I rolled my window down and looked around into the back of the truck. I didn't see anything. But what got me was my truck was a Chevrolet Duramax 3500, and I know I already had 1,000 pounds of rocks in the back of it. So for something to be able to push my truck down 8-10 inches, that thing would have had to weigh 1,000 pounds. Got me. It's just 3 people could have jumped on the back of that truck and not made it squat down 2 inches. So after it did that, I cranked my truck on up and went ahead and pulled on out of there. But after that encounter, I got to thinking about all these years that a whole bunch of things started making sense to me after that. If you knew the crap I went through for 3 or 4 years, when I lived in a cabin right there at the top of the hill. And when my encounter happened, my house had already burned down. My house burned down 8 years ago. My house had been burned down for a while when my actual encounter happened. But while I was living there, man, I'm talking about these. It had to have been these Sasquatches they about drove me insane. But then I'm thinking the whole time before my encounter that those were like people messing around in my woods. So I'd be out there. I'm talking about, and I'd hear these owl calls. I'm thinking there's people making owl calls, and I mean you can hear people like walking in the woods, you know, and they're doing these owl calls and stuff. And I'm thinking there's people are trespassing on my place. So night after night, I'm out there, man. I'm by this time I done got, you know, pissed off, and I just wanted to catch one of these people. All I wanted to do was just catch one of them. That's all I wanted to do, to find out why in the hell they're on my property. So night after night, I get out there, and I'd be dressing in black and man, all kind of stuff. And I'd hear them coming up, walking through the woods, and I'd get down there, and lay down in the leaves and for hours and hours. And they always, I could never figure out how they always knew where I was. I think there's no way they know I'm right here. There's no way. And they were just like, they were always one step ahead of me. And I mean, for years, you wouldn't believe the time. I mean, it literally drove me crazy trying to catch these people. And that one night I had a friend of mine come over and he was going to help me. I said, man, we got to catch these folks. So late that night, I had an old flatbed truck out there at the top of the hill. And me and him went and laid under that truck. And I ended up falling asleep. Like 1 o'clock in the morning or so, he nudges me and he points. And I look up, and I had a tractor sitting on a trailer right there. And I looked, and you can see the silhouette. People, like two people standing there, but you couldn't really see them at all because it was so dark out there. And you couldn't see your hand in front of your face, but you look towards the skyline, you can see them like standing there next to each other, moving around, walking around right there. So I told my friend, I said, all right, on the count of 3. And I had a pump shotgun. It was like an 8-shot pistol grip Remington. And I think he had one of those a pump shotgun. And I didn't want to make that much noise. I just wanted to get out and run up. I was going to bust one of them in the head with the butt of the shotgun. I just wanted to get one of them. As soon as we jump out, he racks the shotgun, and these things take off. Or at the time, I thought it was people. And I couldn't even believe how fast they took off. And then they went around that loop I was talking about where I was parked at when my encounter happened. And there's a gully on the other side of the driveway. It goes straight down like a 4-foot drop, and then it drops on down to about 12 feet. And we had an ice storm like a year before that. So this gully was full of all these treetops and limbs that had broke off from the ice storm. And man, these two cats just took off, just barreling down through you could hear like them breaking limbs, running through the tree limbs. And I'm thinking, man, we must have really scared the heck out of them dudes. They practically killed themselves getting away from us. I was thinking, but it was always funny to me how fast and how they were able to just to run like that in the pitch black dark and then run down and run through them tree limbs like that. I thought, man, they practically killed themselves getting away from us. Now that I think about it, I probably wouldn't. I'm just glad my buddy did rack that shotgun now, because if I'd have ran at that thing and hit it in the head, I would have had kind of a surprise. After my encounter happened, me and my girlfriend went in there. We was camping there at the creek for a week. I think we would stay there and spend some time with my mom. My mom, she passed away a year ago, and my mom, she was everything to me. I loved her more than anything in this world. We were real close, and I think that's really the only thing I really did fear was losing like somebody you love, or like my mother. After she died, and I've had my dad. He's still around. He's 86 years old, and I've had to face the fact that that's going to happen. While she was right before she died, we was down there camping out on the creek and just enjoying the creek and going to their house, spending time with my mom. And anyway, one night we was walking back up the hill, and you could hear something walking in the woods out beside us, and it sounded like it was bipedal too, but it was screaming. It sounded just like a woman screaming, like she was just a woman being just murdered. Is what it sounded like. So I'm thinking, maybe a mountain lion, even though I had already seen the Bigfoot. I didn't know that Bigfoot made screams like that before that. But thinking about it now, this thing was breaking limbs and all kind of stuff. A cougar wouldn't do nothing like that. And we don't really have that many cougar around here, but cougar are pretty stealthy animals, I believe. They wouldn't be just breaking limbs and walking that loud in the woods. But it followed us all the way up the hill. And then after you get to the top of the hill, go up a little bit further. And my uncle, he lives right in the middle. And we got like a garden. He's got his big garden, and across from that, we got another big garden right there that we plant every year. And it always stayed back on the tree line, just where you couldn't see it, and it would sit there just screaming bloody murder. And hell, got in the house and went to bed, and all night that thing just walked around and around the house, sitting there screaming like that, half the night. And this went on for a couple of weeks, to the point where we actually quit staying at the creek. We went up there and started staying at my mother's house. And my mom would come wake me up in the middle of the night and be like, Roman, she said, that cougar or cat or wherever that thing is, she says, out there in the front yard under my window screaming. And I got up, man, I think she's out there just raising hell. And I went and I get the flashlight and I look, but it would always be just right inside the trees. I could never see it. So I went and backed up. We got a bunch of security cameras. So I backed up the security cameras, and I'm looking for maybe a cat or something on there. But at the time, I remember there were a couple, I think, places on the tape where you could see like a dark shadow or something back behind the tree. But I was thinking it sounded more like a cougar because I didn't, like I said, after listening to like your show and listening to other people's descriptions talking about it sounded like a woman screaming. Now I realize that was probably the Bigfoot there too. And of course, noises was being walking around and probably had to be that Sasquatch. But after my mom passed, I quit going in there for a little bit. And then here in the last couple of months, I've started going back down to the creek, back to my hole, and I started back digging again about 2 months ago. Yeah, it's hard for me to get down there for a while and go to my mom's house and just even see my dad, just because of the memories. But actually, I think it's still down there because the last couple of times I've been in there digging, about the time it starts getting dark, you start hearing the owl calls and they start going off. And there, you can tell different. I used to turkey hunt with Jackie Bledsoe. He was the 4-time world champion turkey caller. And one of the things you do in a turkey calling contest is an owl call. But owls, they're real low girthy. That's what they sound like. And I'm thinking, even when I was out there in the woods trying to catch these people, I was like, man, that's the worst owl call I've ever heard. Them Bigfoot's supposed to think I am like absolutely insane. They were probably selling tickets to come watch me out there crawling around out there like an idiot. That's what I feel like now that I know what I know. But that's most of it. You got anything you want to ask me about that?
Roman, definitely. I was just letting you go, man. That's some incredible things that you have experienced over the years. You shared a lot of really personal things, and I want to thank you for being open enough to share some really personal things besides the Bigfoot interactions. I was thinking about the owl calls. So it sounds like what tipped you off is that the owl call itself was just so ridiculous sounding. Not that it was like really loud.
You could tell. Yeah, they were but real bad. Definitely wasn't an owl. I always thought it was a person. I thought there were people on my place doing these owl calls, or let them know where each of them were. I could never catch them. But now I know that it was probably not they probably weren't people. So looking back now, one thing, I'm pretty good in the woods. I can walk very quiet. When I used to hunt, I used to hunt most of the time. I was stalking. I could walk like so many feet, stop. And I couldn't figure out by the lights of me, I could never see who it was walking through the woods, making all these calls. And like I said, now it's probably because it wasn't people. So I feel like I'm an idiot now, knowing what I know now after my encounter and knowing that they do owl calls and stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely. Hindsight is 20/20 for sure. Yeah. What would you say is the most recent interaction or something that you would attribute to Bigfoot? What's the most recent thing you would say?
I would say about 2 weeks ago when I got down, I was down there digging, and I'm sitting there when I'm in my hole. I have a hammer and a chisel because it's a rock outcrop. And I'm sitting there hammering and chiseling away, and then by the time it starts getting dark, you start hearing these owl calls. Where our place is, there's an island that's right across from our place, and the creek goes on both sides of it. And this island's probably about the size of about 1.5 football fields. And it's got just huge trees and just real thick. Even during the wintertime, it's thick. You can't even see in there. And that's where some of the calls are coming from.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. And I got my binoculars, and I was trying to look through there a couple. And I saw a couple things in there when I was looking through my binoculars that kind of leads me to think that it's a perfect place. Nobody ever goes on this island. Nobody ever goes on this island.
What kind of things did you notice through the binoculars?
I was looking through my binoculars, and one of my hobbies was always just like looking to just see how far I can like look into the woods. You can sit there, when you focus in with your binoculars, you want to find a gap in the trees, and then you want to try to just to take your mind away from everything else around it. And you want to just try to focus on that one spot going into the, you know what I'm talking about? Because in order to focus in on behind it, you have to get out of focus with the main picture to be able to look deeper and deeper. Sure. But I saw something. It looked like maybe a head sticking out from behind the tree, but I said it could just be a limb or a bush sticking out beside the tree also. So I sit there and I just sit there and watch it, and then it moved. Just be seen it go in toward the tree. I said, huh? So that's one thing I look for. And then after it moved, I started looking down. I went over to the next tree, and then I saw it at the next tree right beside it. Okay, and then I sat there and watched it for a while, and then it didn't move. And I turned and looked to the right, and then I swung back just to see if it would move. I looked away, and then when I had to look back at it, it wasn't there anymore. And then I looked down, and I saw it down toward the bottom, lower at the bottom end of the tree. So there was definitely some movement going on in there. I can't say it was a Sasquatch, but I think it is.
Very interesting. You mentioned Betsy. Is Betsy still alive?
Yeah, she's still alive. She moved after that. Yeah, she moved, and she was down there all the time. She was, for her to come to me and just tell me something like that, she seemed pretty rattled about it. She was pretty upset about it.
Betsy's got stories.
Yeah.
No question.
Yeah, I bet she does. And, I can get a hold of her. As a matter of fact, I had talked to her ex-sister-in-law the other day, and she had given me Betsy's number because I'd never talked to Betsy after I had to run in with it. So I wanted to call Betsy and tell her, you know what, I ran into that thing coming up the hill. So I've been really meaning, I worked so much. I work all the time, like 6-7 days a week.
Feel free to pass on my info if you ever get to talk to her. I would love to.
Yeah, I will. I'd love to know a little bit more myself. Now, I think if I tell her that, she'll probably open up a little bit more after I tell her I had to actually sing it too. You know how people are on that. I didn't tell too many people about this. First thing, I walked up to my dad's house, and I wasn't, like I said, I lost my fear factor a long time ago. You know, in order for you to be afraid of something, you have to, like, I don't fear death. I know what's going to happen. And when it's your time, it's your time. So, and I had a really bad wreck, like years and years ago. I was in my brand new F-250. I was going up Martin Turner. I had been mudbogging in my Jeep. And I was doing about 85 miles per hour. And I was my girlfriend at the time. I was talking to her. She was mad at me. She kept hanging up on me. So I was sitting there messing with my phone, and I went off shoulder road, and I hit a concrete culvert. I hit head on the concrete culvert. I went end over 125 yards down this embankment. I hit 8 trees. The truck was, nothing left of the truck. The roof was so flat, the stem was smashed down through the seat. The phone, everything in that truck was just, destroyed. And I was standing there on the hood of that truck when it stopped without a scratch on me, and thinking, what the hell just happened?
Wow, you're a lucky guy.
And the record driver next day, he was on his hands and knees at my shirt going, you got some kind of purpose. You got some kind of purpose. And he said, I've been driving a record for you for 20 years. He said, your truck's in the top 10 of the most story vehicles I've ever seen in my life. And said, you ain't got a scratch on you. It was definitely some divine intervention went down. Yeah, I shouldn't even be alive. I should have been hamburger meat. But something, for some whatever reason, it saved my life.
That's wild, Roman.
I had people bringing me parts of my truck.
Really?
Having me autograph it.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Hey, man, would you autograph this for me? I found this tennis ball down at your wreck. It had me signing tennis balls and any part of my truck they could find laying in the ditch down there.
That is so weird.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow. Makes you think about each day for sure.
Yeah, definitely. But that just made me realize that when it's your time, it's your time. And right then went my time. So
absolutely.
If I was coming out of the hill and Bigfoot went over there and killed me, it would have been my time. I went out with my boots on. That's for damn sure.
That's exactly right. The area you were talking about where you dig for rocks, do you guys have granite in that area?
Yeah, we have a whole lot of granite.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of granite. A lot of quartz, too. There's several gold mines up the road. You got the Thorn Mine, which was in McCormick back in the 1800s, produced a pretty good bit of gold. And I think there's a couple other mines around there. And that outcrop I just happened to just be looking in the gully one day, and I seen a rock formation opening in the clay. And I started digging, and man, it was just like orange and green and blue and just every color of the rainbow in this rock.
There's a few people I've talked to, I don't even think on record, where they've mentioned they have hypothesis that massive amount of granite could be related to Bigfoot type things. And I think it might even come up in some missing 411 stuff too, but just wanted to ask you about that. That's very interesting.
Let me tell you, I have Yeah, there's a granite is one of the main rocks we have here. When you drill your wells and stuff out here, you have to drill through granite to get your water. But I tell you what, our place out there on the creek, it's got there's Indian graves. And let me tell you, I've had some serious, anybody's going to run into a Bigfoot, it was going to be me, because I've had some serious encounters with some spirits. And one time, me and my wife, we had like a spirit in our house, and it clawed her all up right there in front of my ass one night.
You mean you saw it?
Attacked her.
Really? Oh dear.
I sat there and watched, and I was trying to grab her and hold her and protect her, and from it was clawed her all the way across her back, everything. I couldn't even believe it. But we had a guy that used to stay there in our place that helped my dad, and he stayed in the camper on the creek. His name was David. And my dad, he owns a bunch of properties there all over the place and has rental properties. So he helped my dad. He was like his handyman. And he stayed on that camper, and my dad provided him a little place to stay down there. And he liked to drink a lot. And one night he drank a little too much, and I guess they'd fallen in the creek, and he drowned in the creek. And anyway, years later, me and my girl I was dating at the time, we were upstairs. I had a big sliding glass door going out onto a balcony out there at my house, and I looked out the glass and I said, "Man, there's David." And I said, he's standing next to some like I could see him and some other guy with a long beard. He was real white faced, and David's skin was green. And she said, "Yeah." She said, "He's waving at you right now." And about the time she said that, he was throwing his hand up, waving at me. I said, "Darn, you can see him too?" She said, "Yeah." But yeah, plain as day, he's been dead for 15 years, and he's standing there waving at me. She saw it. No, she said, waving at you. But I used to see ghosts down there, all kind of spirits all the time down there. And one night, this has been about 8 years ago. We was out there, and man, there was like, my dogs were like chasing something all around in the woods, whatever it was, like hauling blood, because my dogs, man, it was just playing with my dogs. And we looked up, and this big UFO came up. It was like real bright, just elongated, and it's just one solid, just bright light came easing over the trees, and then another one came flying up like real fast behind it. Right when it got up to it stopped, and then both of them just eased on real slow, one right behind the other. That was like creepy. And then at the same time, my dogs are three of them are just being run ragged through the woods, just chasing something that they can't catch. And that was a very odd night right there. I've seen UFOs in broad daylight. I've had them fly clean over my head. At least one of them was like a triangle shape, broad daylight. It was maybe 300 feet above the top of the trees. And then, matter of fact, we were coming in from town, and we was in the truck, and you could see it looked like something dropped out, like almost like a portal over close to where my parents' house was. And we seen it fly back and around. So I said, let's turn up here where the fields are and go here to the fields and see if we can see anything. But as soon as we turned up the road, we saw it coming over the top of the trees, and we just stopped the truck right there in the middle of the road and got out, and it flew right over our head. I could tell you every detail on this thing. It was, you could see everything on it. And it flew right over her head, didn't make a noise or nothing. And she had her phone trying to record it. She said her recorder wouldn't work. Yeah, that was awesome sighting right there.
You said that you're in pretty close proximity to some burial grounds?
Yeah, there's some Indian burial ground on my dad's place. And I got an arrowhead collection like you wouldn't believe. I got
arrowhead
beads,
collection, yeah.
Yeah, I got all kind of stuff. You name it, I got it. Arrowhead was.
How close to the houses are the burial grounds?
No, I'd say within maybe 80, 100 yards.
Oh my goodness, dude. Wow.
Yeah, so there used to be the main camp was right there on our place. If you look at the map, this would have been 7,000-8,000 years ago, these Indians.
So there was like an encampment type deal?
What's that?
There was like a main, like a village type deal, you're saying, or?
Yeah, up on the flag, and then you got the creek down below. See, the camps would have been up there on the top of the hills.
Sure.
The Indians never would put their camps on the slopes, always on the flats. And that's where we find most of the artifacts.
So you're definitely in the thick of something there. You've got so much stuff going on in that one area that you're at, and I'm not surprised after finding out that. I wanted to talk a little bit about the night when you saw the creature and you yelled at it and then it ran away on all fours.
Yeah, it didn't run all the way. It just went up about 30 yards and got behind another tree and started yelling some more. Yeah.
So can you describe like what you noticed from the way it was yelling? Was it just a sound or language, or?
It was more just yelling, and it wasn't all ferocious like a lot of people would say it was. It just raised like it was pissed off. I got to think, so maybe it got sprayed by the skunk. It smelled. That's the way it was acting, like it was just like frustrated, because it smelled just like a skunk. I'm talking about. People always try to describe what it smelled, how the odor was, but this thing smelled. If you've ever rode by a dead skunk on the road, on the highway, no different than that. It was identical to the smell of a dead skunk on the road.
Did you notice, or can you remember any weird details about what you saw?
Yeah, it was like a real dark, it was like a chocolate, looked like more like a chocolate color, real dark brown, black, maybe mixed a little bit. Or could have had mud on it, but it was real dark. And it definitely had some long arms. So that's one thing you could see, something just flapping and flying away. And I could never really tell. I could never really get a good height guess on it because of the way the terrain is, with all the hills, you got dips and all kind of stuff. So where I was standing, I was in the road coming up. So you got like a little 3-foot bank right there. And then it was like over the hump and behind the holly tree right there it slopes back down to the right. When you get over that little hump, and it was behind that big holly tree right there. And then after I said that to it, I didn't know if it understood me or what about me shooting it, where it counts. Yeah. But it's getting a little bit more distance between us. But it ran over behind that cedar tree then, and it was sitting there and just had grabbed a hold of it, and it was like, I guess reached up there with both hands and grabbed a hold of a limb on each side, just sitting there just shaking the tree. And when it went the other direction and started, that really definitely took any fear. And the way it was yelling too, it wasn't like real fear. I guess this could have been maybe a juvenile, maybe, because it didn't sound like it had the lung capacity like some of the other descriptions, some of what other people say. And it sounded like it didn't have that. I didn't feel it when it yelled at me.
I think I would have to say the part that really got me was that it ended up following you up to your truck.
Oh yeah, now that surprised me. That really did surprise me, and it had to have been that creature because there's nothing else that could have. A 3500 Duramax it's got pretty stout suspension on it.
Absolutely.
And like I said, I already had 1,000 pounds of rocks in the back of it, so it was already compressed pretty good before it jumped on the back of it. For it to drop down that far, that's what really got my attention right there. Mm-hmm. I said, man, that thing is bigger than I thought it was. So it had to be heavy.
Oh yeah.
I don't think it jumped on the truck. I think because it went down so fast and came back up so quick. If it would have jumped on it, it would have went down and then hesitated to come up. I think what it did is came up and just put his hands on the back of my tailgate because I had a tool body on the back of it. Okay. So it's pretty stout tailgate. There ain't it's hard steel, solid steel. So I think he just put his hands on the back of the gate and just shoved down on it, and that's what it felt like to me.
Thinking over the years, when it sounds like there's been many times when you've heard things in the woods, have there ever been times where there was a sound you heard and it confused you and you were like, this sound shouldn't be here right now?
Yeah, many times. We'd be out there and I heard this thing one night making this real weird kind of, I don't even know if I can describe it. It was kind of, I'm like, what in the world is that? And it would always do that. It would be there in that ditch down there making that noise. And it was real loud, but I've never heard anything make no noise sound like that. I lived out there and I've sat countless nights. I love to sit outside at night and just listen to the crickets and the sounds of just nature.
Absolutely.
And so my whole life has been sitting outside listening. And when I hear noises like that, I've never heard before. But at the time, I wasn't thinking Bigfoot.
Yeah, exactly. Once you get aware that could be an issue in your area, your outlook kind of changes. Have there ever been any sightings of, I don't know if you've ever heard of Dogman before? Like a creature that kind of has a canine look to it and it's on two legs? No,
I know they probably exist, but I had never seen one of those. By the stories I've heard, I hope I don't.
Well, I was gonna say, count yourself lucky that they're not in the picture that you know of for sure. That's good.
Yeah, that I know of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back then, I was always packing some serious button guns. I always had 2 or 3 guns on me, big shotguns. Held my rifle. I had a 300 Win Mag. I'd always keep on me when I was down there. Now that's an elephant rifle there. That's a big gun. I killed my first deer with that gun when I was like 11 years old, and that's bigger than a little bit bigger than this mag. And I always felt say I was with guns. It wasn't nothing for me when I was like 10 or 11 years old. That's how much times have changed with the kids today. And back when I was a kid, I could walk outside with a 38 stud nose when I was 10, 11 years old. Tell my parents I was in target practice, and they didn't think nothing about it. But these days, man, a kid walks out, the 10-year-old walks out with a gun, you better tackle his ass.
Yeah, it's a little bit different, unfortunately. I'm guessing, what was that, back in the probably 80s or 90s? Or
Yeah, I was born in 72, so that'd been, about early 80s.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's a whole different time for sure.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Roman, you got some weird stuff going on in your area, man. And I don't think it's letting up either, to be honest.
No, I tell you what, I talked to some other people too, and they said that they got some stuff going on their place too. They own several hundred acres, and they said they found some like little teepees and stuff like that on their place.
Really?
And there's a lot of national forest and like bike. They turned them into bike trails now. So It used to be like game management hunting. Now they're like bicycle trails through the woods. And it's back behind where on our side, man, it's still nothing but people. They own hundreds and hundreds of acres of land. They're not selling it. They don't want it to be developed. And I like it that way.
Yeah, myself as well. We can't lose all the land. It doesn't make sense. Right. That's actually something I was going to ask you is, have you talked to your neighbors? And it sounds like you're starting to talk to them, which is good. Yeah,
now the ones that Betsy, I didn't really get along with her brother, which is Tony. He's the one he died here just a few months ago, matter of fact. And his son, now he's got a camper down there. He just moved him a camper in within the last about 6 months ago, and he's been staying there a little bit. And I asked him about it. I said, "You been hearing?" He said, "Yeah, I've been hearing some weird stuff down there." I said, "Hey man, that's Bigfoot."
Oh man, yeah, that doesn't sound like a good time. But you gotta do what you gotta do. Feel free to, if you're ever talking to anyone, always feel free to pass on my information. I always love talking to people. But Roman, I'm so glad that you reached out to me. This has been an incredible conversation, and I'm just blown away by your area. It's been a fun chat.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I enjoy your show, man. Like I said, that's what made me decide to come on out and talk about it.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that.
My dad told me, he said, "We didn't quit smoking that stuff." I said, "Man, I don't smoke anything, Dad."
Oh, good stuff.
They think I'm crazy as hell.
Oh, that's funny. But I'll let you go so I don't keep you all night. But dude, keep looking over your shoulder. But sounds like you've got it under control.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Like I said, as soon as I find out something, I'll hit you back and let you know what's going on.
Fantastic. Good talking to you, Roman.
All right, Jeremiah.
You have a great night, sir.
All right, man. You too.
Just want to take a few minutes to say thank you to Roman for coming on the show, and thank you to you, all my listeners, for listening to the podcast. Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. Something I would love to hear, and I've never asked for this before, but if you've ever randomly met another person and you found out that you both listen to the Bigfoot Society, I would love to hear about that. It just sounds like a really funny scenario. I have heard of that happening a few times, but I would love to hear your story as well. So you can email me, bigfootsociety@gmail.com. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. I'll see you back next time, listeners. New shows on Mondays and Fridays. I'll see you then.